I do love talking about numbers, and this is one place where my staff can complain about my talking about numbers because it's a budget. And so there are lots of numbers in the budget, so I'm really happy to be able to do that. And I want to just reiterate Rich's point. This is my, I think, 18th budget, 6 as an executive and 12 as a county council members. It's a lot of budgets. And I feel really good about this one. And I feel in the context of my time as executive, I really feel good about this one. You know, my first budget started with being told we had an $80 million shortfall, and a lot of that was in the current year spending, which means cuts to programs in the middle of the year, which is a horrible thing to have to do. And then there was the COVID budget 1, COVID budget 2, recovery from COVID budget 3, when the federal money starts disappearing, and this is probably the most normal budget that we've been able to do. And I think, you know, it is a very different process. But even with this process, we started on a path and the budget would have been larger. And then, and we were projecting incredible reserves. We still have incredible reserves. We had even more incredible reserves. And then the last distribution, the first of the year, January of this year, was the tax collected from December of 2022. And the problem was that was an enormous drop in the capital gains income, which resulted in was a $100 million drop in our projected, and so our projected surplus drops $100 million overnight. And the budget we were working on had to be shrunk. And I will say that I spent 2 weeks trying to pull about $81 million. And if you don't know what the pain is of actually looking at things you really wanted to do, there was nothing frivolous, so you weren't, you know, building a racetrack or any of this other nonsense. We were just focused on delivering services to people. And to have to sit down and say, I can't do this and I can't do that was a really difficult thing to do, not something I wanted to do. But on the other hand, it's healthier than budgets we've produced before. Our reserve targets were 10%, which we only achieved in my administration, never achieved before that. And this year, we'll end this year at about 15. Current year, we ended about 15. And that's enabled us to take some of that surplus and spend a lot of it on one-time expenditures. We're not supposed to spend it on things that have ongoing expenses, but we can spend it on one-time stuff. So it's kind of exciting to fill some gaps we haven't been able to fill with one-time money. It's nice to not be thinking about a budget that we have to either do only what we did last year, or to even retreat from things we did last year. So I start this, I think, in a really much happier place. As much as painful as the last couple of weeks were and the cuts we had to make, I still feel this is a really sound budget. Next. So we make key investments in the 25 recommended budget. We preserve vital services for our county residents, record funding for Montgomery County Public Schools, and other enhancements for county programs to support children, specifically on the school. This is $107 million over last year. It's $132 million over MOE. We could have taken a $25 million cut in this budget to stay within our MOE guidelines. We didn't do that because that would have meant pulling teachers out of classrooms and doing things that would have been disruptive to schools. So we are at, you know, $132 million over last year. It's 107, like I said, 107 million in new money. We're working with the school system to close whatever gaps remain. We think we can do this. I know we can do this without having to tap into either our reserves or back into the basic budget. So I'm happy about where this gets us. We fully funded Montgomery College's request, partly because Montgomery College was so astoundingly reasonable. If anybody's here from Montgomery College, you get points for reality-based budgeting. It's really serious. I mean, when you understand what your resources are and build a budget understanding the resources, not everybody does that. Hopefully, everybody will learn to do that. It's record funding for climate change and environmental initiatives in this budget. We provide key investments to public safety departments to enhance crime prevention, fire, corrections, and rehabilitation services. We've continued to invest in public safety. I don't know where people get the idea we're defunding public safety. We've pretty much done anything but defund it. And we've done a lot of new programs, and I will say that, in response to the rising crime in the county, we've been elevating our response. We've had a rising response to the rising crime, and people are working really hard, and we've got plans going forward that we think will build an even stronger budget for the police. You may see some of that to come. We've increased support for affordable housing and housing-related services, and this is a good example of the next one is significant investments in economic development and workforce training. In January, I was looking at increasing affordable housing by $100 million in this budget. We're only increasing it by $65 million. It's an unprecedented $65 million increase in affordable housing. In January, we were talking about creating a $25 million economic development fund. We wanted to have resources available to help people who want to expand here and grow here. It's down to $7.5 million in the budget. Those are things that had to come out that did not have human services impacts. Those are some of the hard decisions we made. This budget provides additional support for our county's community partners. That's all the nonprofits that make us look good. I continue to remind people, as much as we do, a lot of the work at the community level is carried out by nonprofits, and without them, this work wouldn't get done. And if the county had to do it, it would cost us a whole lot more, and we would do a whole lot less. So I'm really grateful to have these partners. And our side of this is we're adding a 3% increase to the budgets of nonprofits to make sure they can cover rising expenses, and that includes disabilities and also senior care programs. Next. Budget pressures, they're still there. High inflation and cost increases for county services. Everything has gone up. Now, obviously, fuel's down a little bit, but fuel's not where it was before. And over the last year, fuel is not in a good place at all. Construction costs have gone up. We have a hard time keeping up with inflation in construction. Construction services have gone up because people are paying more. People in the private sector are paying more to attract and retain employees, and has an impact on us because we compete for the private sector, with the private sector, for employees. And if our wages don't match their wages for similar jobs, people go to the private sector. So that's something we've struggled with. We are making efforts, like with the police and fire almost immediately, but with other departments, where we're adjusting pay levels to match what the private sector is paying. Because if we don't match it, we don't get those people. If we don't get those people, we don't deliver services. It is a very competitive labor market that we're dealing with. We have increased demand for county service, increased needs for assistance for individuals, families, and businesses. And I'll say that food is probably one of the things that we notice most. We spent about $17 million last year. We're spending about the same this year. This is unprecedented. Before COVID, we weren't spending any of this. During COVID, we were meeting amazing needs in the county. But what COVID showed us is that when people were immobile, they had absolutely no place to go to get anything. And so we were the only place. But it also showed how many people, now they were coming to our doorstep. And when they came to the doorstep of all the agencies, all the nonprofits, religious and private, that serve this county, the need for food was demonstrated to be much greater than any of us had anticipated. And if you talk to any of their providers, they'll tell you the lines are the same as they were during COVID. And so the need has persisted, and it probably just shows the underlying disparities in the community, much as the healthcare needs. What we did during COVID revealed the extent of the health disparities in the community and the lack of services that many minority communities do not get. We've had a decline in transfer and recordation tax revenues. Thank you, Mr. Powell, for keeping interest rates so high that people don't want to buy or sell homes. It has really stomped on our revenues this year. This budget, or our surplus, about $24 million is going to cover a hole in this year's budget that was caused by a decline in recordation and transfer taxes, and another 26 or whatever it is going to plug into the coming year's budget in anticipation that the economy is not going to recover fast enough for us to get what would have been a normal set of revenues. So just picture this budget and imagine we would have had $50 million more in reserves and $50 million more in taxes if the economy was behaving as normal, particularly in the housing sector. And we are projecting a mild recession impacting FY24 and FY25 revenues, but everybody says it's mild. It could be extremely mild. We hope it's extremely mild. Next. In developing the budget, and Rich touched on this, we did all these community forums, and they were significant because we used to do the community forums after the budget was done. And I thought this is a really weird way to do it because they don't even know what we've done. We're asking for your input, and the input was totally useless. And so we started at the beginning. Our forums, I think, started back in October. Was that early? And we were asking people what you want, and it gave people a chance to help us think about what the biggest issues were in the community. Our reserve levels will project to be 15% at the end of FY24, 11.6%, even after spending them down on all of the one-time spending we're doing. We're going to wind up with 11.6 million, 6%, and it's about 106 million over our current 10% reserve target. But I'm comfortable leaving a cushion in there because if there is a mild recession, we don't want to take ourselves under 10% because the rating agencies will not be happy. And so we're trying to make sure that we wind up in the right place when we get to the end of FY25. Rich, do you want to talk? Yep. And I'm up here in case I have to insert vital information.
Yes. We're gonna tag team to get through the whole presentation. So, as the county executive mentioned, a record amount of money, $3.3 billion for the public school system, the largest ever increase for the public school system that was not tied to a tax increase. So of $107 million. So, and again, reiterating, that's $132 million above maintenance of effort, or $888 increase per pupil, also putting money into the early care initiative. Do you want to move on? So again, those of you who participated last year saw this chart. While we have a record amount of money on a per pupil basis for the upcoming year, when you compare it to inflation, inflation-adjusted dollars, we're still not quite up to the level we were at in the time frame right before the Great Recession. So we're making progress. There's still a gap to close. So again, as the county executive mentioned, and one of the big budget pressures we faced were having federal funds that we've been getting to help with COVID response and all the other economic dislocation that occurred, having us step in and replace some of that money with our general funds. So you'll see this $3 million increase for homeless shelter capacity, security, and overflow sheltering during the winter. The county executive has been joined by the county council on an effort to end childhood hunger in Montgomery County. So you're going to see $17 million to help with food insecurity, including $3 million to be distributed through HHS and 14 through our Office of Food Systems Resiliency. So, and enhancements to help make sure that children who receive free and reduced price meals during the school year have access to food during the summer. Mental health and substance misuse. So we've had crisis teams out working with our first responders to deal with people suffering a mental illness or substance misuse. We currently have budgeted 5 crisis teams. 3 of them are up and running. 2 we're trying to stand up with additional staff. And we are going to have 7 in FY25, all supported by county dollars. We're in the process of working with the council to set up to use the money from our opioid litigation that has come in to help with substance misuse. And we are doing a county government-wide program on youth safety that's being headed up by our wonderful health officer, Dr. Keisha Davis. On affordable housing, I know the county executive is going to want to jump in on this one, but as we pointed out, $65 million in additional funding to finance affordable housing. So a record amount of money of $169 million to support the preservation, production, and protection of affordable housing in our county. We are providing more money for rental assistance, another place where the federal funds are going away and we're jumping in with our own funds in order to make sure we keep people in housing, that people aren't evicted. So you see a sizable increase for HHS in their rental assistance programs. We are standing up the support for the rent stabilization law that was passed by the county council at the urging of the county executive. So DHCA will have a more robust ability to enforce that law, as well as working with common ownership communities in the county. In public safety, you heard the county executive talk about enhancements to technology for public safety. Not only are we continuing to provide bonuses to try to recruit more police officers, we're working with a new recruiter who has been successful at some of our neighboring jurisdictions to help bring in more people into the police academy. We are going to be expanding our drone as a first responder program. Hopefully people know we are the largest police department in the country using drones as a first responder. We have them flying out of Wheaton and Silver Spring. We're going to add Bethesda. And then one for Gaithersburg, Germantown, and Montgomery Village. We can have a wider area in the up-county because there's less sensitive airspace, so we're going to add 2 more drones in zones in the county. We're continuing to put money into technology, the license plate readers, automated traffic enforcement. The police department just recently won a $500,000 competitive grant for new equipment for ballistic testing and a mass spectrometer to look at other evidence. The federal budget, thanks to our congressional delegation, had $936,000 earmarked for more technology for our police department. So we're working aggressively to make sure our police have the best technology out there to enhance our crime fighting efforts. In public, for the fire department, we're providing additional staffing at the Sandy Spring Fire Station. We are launching a fire camp for girls. We're trying to get more young people, especially girls, to get excited about being a firefighter. So hopefully this will get more young women involved and engaged and excited about becoming firefighters. And we're also expanding our ability to do cancer screening for our firefighters. Obviously, firefighters get exposed to a lot of materials that can be carcinogenic, and so we want to make sure they all have that early detection for cancer. For corrections, we have fully funded the pre-release center that's up and running, which is an award-winning program for the county. And we're continuing the county executive's initiative to have the bakery program, giving people who are coming out of a corrections facility training to get a job. We reopened the bakery. We had baked goods this morning. Unfortunately, they're all gone. But if anyone wants to use it across county government, make sure you talk to Ben Stevenson about the Sweet Release Program. Which is the name of the bakery. And Ben will tell you, when you're eating for justice, there are no calories. So, next slide. Environmental sustainability. We have $365 million in the budget to combat climate change across all agencies. We've got an increase to the Green Bank program to help finance the transition from gas to electricity in many of our buildings. So we are working hard across transportation, across environmental protection in order to combat climate change. More information about what we're trying to do. Again, helping small businesses, nonprofits deal with our building energy performance standards. As well as building out our electric vehicle system for both our buses and for other county vehicles. The county executive, as he mentioned, I don't if you're going to jump in on this one, a record amount of money for economic development. We thought early on when we figured our reserves were topping 17%. They dropped down to 15%, which is still a sizable and record amount of surplus reserves. $27.3 million will be directed to economic development activities, funding for the BioHub in Montgomery County. One of the things we hear from so many businesses is this is a great place to be if you're in life sciences. We are a global center of excellence in life sciences, the third highest concentration of businesses and people. But one of our barriers to growth in this field is not having enough trained employees. So the BioHub hopefully will provide that connection to bring in more skilled workers, which make us an even more attractive place to locate. And the county is looking at building out our own Montgomery County Tech Council. Long ago, the Tech Council of Maryland started in Montgomery County, was just focused on Montgomery County. They've gone statewide. And as the county executive said, we shouldn't just be one blip on a large brochure. We are the centerpiece of technology and life sciences for the region, for the state. We should be marketing ourselves, pushing ourselves, bringing those businesses together. So that's why we're going to have our own Montgomery County Tech Council.
Yeah. So I just want to add something at this point. The context of what we're doing, we're like the number 3 in the country region. We went from number 4 to number 3, so that's progress. What we're looking at are what are the holes in Montgomery County's landscape that Boston and San Francisco have in particular. Obviously, Raleigh still has some things we don't have. And the goal in this budget is to identify the things that other people have that we don't have, so we're able to put those things in place. We want to be in a position where nobody comes here and says, we'd really like to be here, but for this, we would come there. We don't want any more but for, this is why we're going someplace else. We want to make sure we can fill those gaps. So the training facility for manufacturing is a big deal. The biotech community wants us to create our own tech council. We're not going to call it the tech council, but they want us because they want to be promoted. They are kind of, people would say we punch under our weight nationally and internationally. We have all of this stuff here, and people don't know where we are. If you said Shady Grove Life Sciences, it would mean nothing to anybody else in the world. If you said Boston or San Francisco Life Sciences or North Carolina, the Triangle, that all means something to everybody else in the world. And so we need to make Montgomery County mean something to everybody else in the world. So we need to start marketing ourselves and telling a story, but we also need to let them know that we're willing to invest. I will say that historically, in general, both on issues like this or transportation, we've been unwilling to invest. And frankly, the state hasn't invested very much either. So not only do people tell us that other people have more toys than we do, but they'll tell us that, I'll go to Texas or South Carolina because they're offered better incentives. So we're talking to the state, working with them about how the state can enhance its programs. We know we need to enhance our programs. We think we compete really well on all the metrics, so figuring out how to plug these holes, and we know what the holes are. So between increasing our incubators, we've been approached by a major company that does world-class incubators, not just in one place. They do these in about 13 places around the country. They've proposed opening up one here. That would put us on the map with a name brand that everybody in the world would recognize, and it's the kind of thing we need to do. So I'm always very careful about how we invest. And I've been often critical about some of the investments that we've made. But when you invest in things where they actually pencil out, when you can look at this and say, if we put this money here, we know we're going to wind up with more money coming back in, those are the deals we do. And I'm really happy to say we've put out a lot of money. Nobody will criticize us for not having put out a lot of money over the last few years, but we're going to continue to make the investments we need. And I'm confident they're going to pay off. And it's really amazing to see the sciences. And if anybody ever wanted to get geeky, we could talk about the incredible advances that people are making here, because you are living in the center of a place that's going to alter human life and the prospects for all of our future health. And I don't think people always grasp that, and all the negativity out there about the world and what's going on. I don't think people realize how close we are to things that are life-changing in a good way. So we want to be a part of that, and that's why we're putting money in it. This fund has $7.5 million for small, high-growth businesses, so we can help them. There's this thing called the Valley of Death. Like, you get a product and it looks like it's going somewhere, and then you need more money. more than the little bit of money you used when you figured out what the secret was. And then there's this cliff. It's hard finding that funder who's going to take you across what you have to do to get to the next stage. We want to make sure that for companies that are really ready to go, they're able to plug in there to make sure they survive to the next stage and they can get themselves in the commercial market. We're adding 2 more business liaisons in the Montgomery County Business Center. We resurrected this after the last administration when everything went to EDC, and they completely abandoned local economic development. That stuff was shrunk and scattered. And we've put back together the teams, and you'll find our people now going door to door in business centers around the around the county, meeting with companies that want to start up, meeting with companies that have troubles and need assistance. So we're finally doing what we think a local business center should do. And it's a total, we've added $2.4 million to WorkSource Montgomery. It's a 21% increase over last year. The Sports Summer Rise Youth Program and programming for the correctional facility. But I've got to say, when I came in, WorkSource Montgomery was nothing to be proud of. In terms of who they served, it wasn't who they should serve. And the number of people they served was pathetically small. I remember sitting in a council meeting where they came in talking about the East County and said, yeah, we got 5 people. Really? That wasn't very impressive. And we're actually doing real work now. He works with thousands of people. He works with lots of businesses. And I'm really proud of the work that they're doing over there. So there's a lot of really good stuff going on. I just want you all to know about it. I don't always talk about economic development, but I want to be clear. We see this lane. This lane belongs to us if we want it, if we're willing to take it. And I just want to be clear. We're going to own this lane, and we're going to take this lane because we can actually perform well here.
Thank you. And leading some of our efforts in the executive branch, newly confirmed unanimously by the County Council, Assistant Chief Administrative Officer Ken Hartman Espada, and Gene Smith from the Business Center team. So on the transportation front, we will be launching the Great Seneca Transit Network, which will provide access from the Shady Grove Metro Station across to the University of Shady Grove and the whole Great Seneca Science Complex. So helping people in Rockville, Gaithersburg, and Shady Grove. We're going to continue to repair and replace bus stops, bus shelters, funds for roadside tree replacement, and then something that I guess the community greatly wants, stump removal services. So Chris and Emma are going out today to start pulling out stumps. Additional money for road resurfacing. We maintain most of the roads in our jurisdiction, and we got to keep that up. And then additional funding for our Vision Zero approach to make sure we are reducing, if not eliminating, all pedestrian deaths on our roadways. For libraries and recreation, expanding access to digital materials, as well as more funding for world language programs. We have a lot of people in this county who want materials outside of English, and the library system is quickly moving to address those needs. In recreation, another year of free fitness passes for all of our rec centers so that we make sure everyone has an opportunity to get healthy and use our facilities without cost, expanding Excel beyond the bell, so after-school programming through our rec department to both Eastern and Banneker middle schools. For the county government, we have a presidential election this fiscal year in November. We are fully funding the request from the Board of Elections in order to operate that election. Part of it is we get a bill from the state to run this election, so we want to make sure we have all the services, safety, and security around the presidential election. First money for the public election fund for the next county election in 26. More money to enhance our county's IT system and cybersecurity. We are going to be shifting the MC311 program from its current home in the Office of Public Information to our Department of Technology and Enterprise Solutions. So much of MC311's work is around technology, and therefore it's a good fit to have it in TEBS. We'll soon be launching a new 311 artificial intelligence bot, Monty 2.0. So we will be unleashing this more or less toddler through our website and trying to have it learn about county government and the needs of our residents. But look for that, and that's going to give us an opportunity to interact in more than 100 languages, too, across our county. So, as the county executive said, we are fully funding, obviously, all of our employee contracts. The county government does not work with the employees, without our employees. We have incredibly talented, dedicated employees who help the residents of our county every day. So we fully honor them and fund their contracts. We are improving the Office of Human Resources with more people to recruit, and we're going to be launching a whole new online application system in a matter of months, which will make it far easier for people to apply for jobs. We are centralizing many of the labor functions in the Office of Labor Relations so that we have coordinated and consistent relationships with our unions. We are eliminating 60 long-term vacant positions and repurposing 40 other long-term vacant positions for other purposes in county government. So we will be using, again, eliminating 60 and then shifting 40 to other roles. With our community providers, we are continuing funding for our community grants program. You can see the various categories here, including $1.2 million for nonprofit security grants. We announced the round just yesterday for FY24, and there'll be another $1.2 million for FY25. There's a 3% increase, there's a 3% increase for all of our community providers, so people working in the developmental disabilities, adult services, and other community providers that we deal with. Next slide. Park and Planning Commission, almost an $11 million increase. WSSC, as we had agreed to with Prince George's County, so not news here, but an 8.5% rate increase per the spending affordability guidelines, fully fund the request from the county council, and restore money for the Office of People's Counsel. One of the things that this county government has been incredibly diligent on, and it's a great story to tell, is our effort to make sure we maximize our reimbursement from the federal government for all the COVID funding all the COVID spending we did during the pandemic. We have requested more than $218 million from the federal government for reimbursement for things that we did. There are few, if any, local governments around the country that have been as aggressive and prepared to do this. It has taken a lot of work from many people in this room, especially the staff in the Department of Health and Human Services, to make sure we are keeping track of things. Earl Stoddard told us from the beginning we should do this. He made sure we had a consultant on board, and we kept track of all of our spending, and we've put in $218 million worth of requests. We have already been approved for $117 million. We are waiting on the last $33 million to come our way. The federal government has to give it to the state. We found out today, they sent it to the state today. So look for Earl with a giant ceremonial check walking around Rockville looking for an ATM to put it in. But we are going to be receiving that $33 million the county executive has suggested, and we will be sending over an amendment to the budget for these items to be spent, to be used with that $33 million, so that we can't bill it into the budget formally, but we are going to be sending over those amendments as soon as the money is in the bank, and this is what we're going to spend it on. Some things I want to point out are continued effort to the Newcomers Program, funding for the Kid Museum, funding for Black Rock Center for the Arts, funding for the Glen Echo Spanish Ballroom Project. This is the full amount of money for us to put in so that the feds can put up their money to make sure that that facility is continued to be maintained. The money for the high growth small business program, and a variety of other things that you can see on this list, including several additional pieces of equipment or programs for the police department. So, so look for all of these to be going over to the county council as soon as the money is in the bank. We are also putting in $500,000 for a sexual and gender minorities health center project, working with the council members to make sure we are providing assistance to our trans community. And with that, again, thank you to all of you who helped get this budget to this point. It is a very strong budget for the community and for continuing to keep us moving forward and for recognizing and appreciating the great work of county employees. Chief Jones is now here, and again, a special shout out to Chief Jones and Director Fasalo for their decades of commitment to the people of Montgomery County and in their last budget rollout. We will happily send you the invite for next year if you want to come. If you want to come, because I came. There might. Well, who knows next year? But we keep finding things that we think Chief Jones would be interested in. So, but thank you all, and I don't know if you have any concluding remarks or you want to go straight to questions.
I'm happy to go to questions, but I did want to say when we talked about transportation, I just want to reiterate something I've said before. This county is not able to build the infrastructure it needs to be fully competitive with jurisdictions across the river. And I want to be blunt about that. And we get a lot of nonsense from people in a certain industry who keep saying, oh, this is such a high tax district, and they'll go to Fairfax County. And what we've been pointing out over and over again, and we did this at the state level, is that Virginia's taxes on commercial property dwarf our taxes. And so if people say they're going to Virginia because it's a low-tax jurisdiction, it's not true. They go to Virginia because it's a high-tax jurisdiction that took that money and reinvested it in transportation and infrastructure to make them attractive to businesses that come there. When they needed the Silver Line, they figured out how to fund the Silver Line and plug it through Tyson's Corner. Any of you who are old enough, and I'm guessing most people in the room are, to remember Tyson's Corner pre-Silver Line, and Tyson's Corner now, it is a radically different place, and it was a place that was transformed by investment. Virginia has been able to do this over and over again, and people have got to get it out of their heads that everything you want to spend is not an expense. Sometimes it's an investment. Putting money into infrastructure that makes people want to come to where you're trying to attract them is an investment, and we continue to lag. We don't have the resources to do this. We have a very limited capital budget. Our bonding, if you follow it, we've been at $280 million a year. So bonds are supposed to pay for construction projects. So what has happened with inflation? Every construction project over the last 5 years has gone up, and the value of $280 million has gone down. We are buying less today than we were able to buy 5 years ago. And people wonder, why aren't you building the schools, or why aren't you building the transportation? And the answer is real simple. You're not building it because you're not willing to put tax money into the places where it's needed. We do not need to tax Montgomery County taxpayers for this, and that's another thing. They use this, you're going to raise taxes as if we're just raising taxes generically. No, we want to raise them like Virginia did. The business community over there thought taxing them was a really good idea to build things that built value in their communities. We wish our business community over here, who are actually the same people who build over there, would say it would be good for Montgomery County to tax us so you could invest that money into our communities to make us more attractive to outside investment. So that's what we're going to continue to push on. It is probably the most important undone thing at this moment, because the moment we could create special taxing districts, we can go to the federal government for bonds. We could accelerate the build out of our infrastructure instead of looking at 10-year timelines and figuring out how to make the infrastructure as less costly as possible with sacrifices and efficiency. We could build what we need, we could build it in the timeline that would impress other people, and when someone goes to JLL, which is one of the people who consults with government and businesses, and asks JLL, could Montgomery County deliver a project in the time next 2 years, instead of saying, we have no idea, they could answer the way they do in Virginia, which is if it's in their plans, they can build it, and they've got the funds to do it, and they're ready to go. We need to go that way. And there's, Virginia, I always used to think of as the Wild West. They have learned from the kind of anarchic approach to development. They're doing a much better job. We need to grow up, and if there's somebody doing it better than us, we need to learn from them. We do not have to be obsessed with Montgomery County Way. Sometimes that way gets us lost. We've got to focus the right way, whether it's the Montgomery County Way or not. There's a right way out there, and we ought to be following it. So that's what I'm going to try to push as we go through the rest of this year and into next year until we get this right. But I'll take questions now. Rich and I will see what we can do with them.
So just so you know, that the entire budget is now online on the county website. You can get all the information on the county website, montgomerycountymd.gov. Go to the open budget page, or there's probably just a link right from the home page. You can get all the information about the different departments. You can look at information by different categories: economic development, senior programs, climate change, all of those things. So all of that is available, and books will be going out to the libraries tomorrow.